joined search and rescue because I wanted to help people. Lost hikers, injured campers, families waiting at trailheads hoping for good news. Most people think the wilderness is dangerous because of animals or weather. That's not true. The most dangerous thing about the wilderness is how quiet it is. Because silence makes room for things that don't make sense. And once you notice them, you can't unnotice them. The call came in just after sunset. A solo hiker, male, mid-30s, last seen entering a national forest trail that was supposed to be easy. I'd handled dozens of cases like this before. At first, I felt nothing but routine curiosity. Where did he park? Which trail? What gear did he bring? The usual questions. But something felt off immediately. His phone was still pinging, but every ping came from a different location, not slowly moving, jumping, miles apart. At first, we blamed bad reception. We always do. By the time our team entered the forest, night had already fallen. No wind, no insects, no birds. That kind of silence isn't normal. That's when the radio crackled. Not static, a voice. Weak, breathing heavily. I think I'm off the trail. My stomach tightened. We froze. That was the missing hiker. The problem? The voice came through 3 radios at once, each one receiving it from a different direction. That caused the first real moment of confusion. Radios don't do that. People don't do that. We followed one of the signals. After an hour, we found footprints. Bare footprints, no shoes, no socks. Deep impressions, as if whoever made them was standing still for a long time. But they didn't lead anywhere. They simply stopped. That's when fear quietly replaced curiosity. One of the older team members whispered something I wish I'd ignored. I've seen this before. When I asked him where, he shook his head. Different forest, he said. Same mistake. The radio crackled again. Same voice, but this time it said my name, exactly the way my supervisor had said it earlier. Same tone, same pause. My blood went cold. No one had told the missing hiker my name. That's when the forest stopped feeling empty. That's when I felt isolated, even standing in a group. We called the voice back, asked for coordinates. The reply came instantly. Too instantly. I can see your lights now. Every headlamp in our group flicked off at the same time, not slowly, all at once. And from deep in the trees, we heard footsteps. Not running, walking, coming closer. Our headlamps flickered back on almost immediately, less than 2 seconds. But in the wilderness, 2 seconds of darkness is enough for your imagination to run wild. We scanned the trees. Nothing. No movement, no animals, no person. Just the sound of our own breathing. Someone laughed nervously and said it was probably a power surge. Another blamed moisture. No one actually believed that, because the radio crackled again. This time, the voice was clearer. Too clear. I'm cold, it said. Not yelling, not panicked, just stating a fact. We asked him to repeat his location. There was a pause, then he said, I already told you. But he hadn't, at least not on the radio. One of the newer volunteers looked at me and whispered, That's what you said earlier. He was right. I had said that exact sentence to our team less than an hour before. Same words, same rhythm. That's when fear stopped being abstract. Something was listening. We pushed deeper into the forest, against our instincts, against protocol. That's what people don't understand about search and rescue. Once you hear a voice, you go toward it. That's how we found the boot. Just one, half buried in wet leaves, sitting upright like it had been placed there intentionally. Inside was a foot, still inside the sock. The smell hit us immediately. Rot, metallic, sweet, pure disgust. Someone vomited. Someone else dropped to their knees. This wasn't an animal attack. Animals don't remove boots. We called it in, or tried to. Every channel was suddenly active, not static. Voices, overlapping voices, some crying, some whispering, some calm. One of them was my supervisor, not on the team with us. He was miles away at base, but the radio said in his exact voice, "You need to keep moving." That's when panic set in, because our supervisor wasn't supposed to know where we were, and he definitely wasn't speaking into our radios. The voices started repeating things we had said earlier in the day. Casual comments, jokes, arguments, things no one should have remembered unless they were there when we said them. One volunteer tore his headset off and screamed that this wasn't real. That's when the forest went quiet again. Too quiet. No radios, no wind, just breathing. Not ours. One of our lights caught movement, a silhouette between the trees, human-shaped, standing completely still. We called out. It didn't move. We approached, and as we got closer, we realized something was wrong. The proportions were off. Too tall, arms hanging too low, head tilted slightly like it was trying to understand us. Then it spoke, in the missing hiker's voice. "I'm right here." Someone screamed. The figure stepped backward into the trees and vanished without making a sound. No footsteps, no branches snapping, just gone. That's when anger replaced fear. People shouted at each other, accusations flew. Someone accused command of staging a sick test. Someone else accused another volunteer of playing a joke. No one wanted to accept the alternative, because accepting it meant admitting something was wrong with the forest itself. The radio crackled again. Coordinates came through, clear, precise. We followed them and reached a location that made no sense. A steep ravine, no trails, no access, and yet at the bottom we saw something reflective. A second boot, perfectly placed, facing uphill, like it was waiting for us. As we stared down into the ravine, the radio whispered one final sentence. "You're getting closer now." But the voice wasn't the hiker anymore. It was mine. Same tone, same breathing, same fear. And I realized something that made my blood go cold. The forest wasn't copying us. It was practicing. We decided to pull back. That should have been the end of it, but the forest didn't let us leave that easily. Halfway back toward the trail, we realized one of us was missing. No scream, no warning, just gone. His headlamp still lay on the ground, glowing softly, pointed toward the trees. We called his name. No answer. Then the radio responded, "Don't shout, you'll confuse him." That sentence didn't come from any channel we recognized. And worse, it was correct, because the voice sounded like his. We found him 20 minutes later, standing in the middle of the trail, facing away from us. He turned slowly when we called his name. His face looked normal, too normal, but his eyes were wrong. They didn't focus, they didn't react, like he was listening to something else. When we asked where he'd been, he answered immediately, "I was right behind you." That wasn't true, we all knew it, but the way he said it made us doubt our own memory. That was the moment confusion became fear. Command finally broke radio silence. Their message was short, cold, unemotional. "You are not to document anything unusual. You are not to discuss this over open channels. Continue the search." Someone snapped, yelled into the radio, demanded explanations, demanded backup. The response came instantly. Too instantly. "We know." That's when anger replaced fear, because it meant they'd heard this before, and they still sent us in. We tried asking the radio questions. Before we finished speaking, it answered, not incorrectly, not vaguely, perfectly, as if it already knew what we were going to say. At one point, someone whispered, "This thing knows us." And the radio replied, "We learned quickly." No one could tell which voice it used anymore. We reached a clearing that didn't exist on any map. In the center was a pile of gear, boots, backpacks, jackets, some new, some decades old, all clean, all arranged like offerings. The smell was overwhelming, human rot covered up. Someone dropped to their knees and cried. Someone else screamed. This wasn't one missing hiker. This was many. The volunteer who disappeared earlier started talking, not to us, to the trees. He whispered names, dozens of names. Then he said something that made my stomach turn. "They don't want us to leave yet." We grabbed him, shook him, yelled. He snapped out of it suddenly and looked terrified. He begged us not to let him go back into the trees. That's when we realized something had already been talking to him. Command finally ordered a retreat. No explanation, no questions allowed, just, "Leave everything, do not look back." As we turned away, the radio whispered one last thing. "You always come back." Not threatening, certain. As we reached the edge of the forest, my radio crackled one final time. It didn't use a voice, it used a memory. My mother's voice, from a voicemail she left years ago, saying my name. And I realized something terrifying. This wasn't about rescuing people anymore, it was about learning them. The operation was officially shut down the next morning. No press release, no explanations, just a quiet notice sent to our phones. Search suspended due to environmental risk. That was it. The missing hiker was never declared found, never declared dead, just unresolved. His family waited at the ranger station for days. We weren't allowed to talk to them, not because we didn't want to, because we didn't know what to say. What do you tell someone when the place that took their loved one is still listening? The volunteer who disappeared briefly never returned to duty. He tried, but he couldn't sleep. Every night he claimed he heard the forest outside his house. Not trees, footsteps and voices, repeating things he'd thought but never said out loud. 6 months later, he vanished. Not in the forest, from his apartment. His radio was found on the kitchen table, turned on, still transmitting static. I shouldn't have done it, but I accessed the archived SAR reports, decades back. Same phrases, same patterns. Missing hikers whose voices were heard days later, coordinates that shifted, search teams that reported radio anomalies. Every time, the response was the same. Silence, transfers, early retirements. I felt anger then, not at the forest, at the people who knew and kept sending others in. There was an unofficial explanation passed quietly among veterans, never written, never spoken clearly. The forest doesn't kill people, it keeps them. Not physically, something else. Their voices, their habits, their memories. Enough to sound human, enough to lure the next person deeper. The forest doesn't hunt, it waits. And when you answer, you teach it something new. 3 years later, I heard the radio again. I hadn't touched it since that night. It turned on by itself. No static, no interference, just a single sentence. "We found someone." I froze. The voice wasn't the hiker, it wasn't mine, it was new, young, hopeful, someone I didn't recognize yet. And that's when I understood. The transmission wasn't meant for me, it was meant for whoever answered next. I destroyed the radio that night, but sometimes, when I'm alone, I still hear it. Not in my ears, in my memory, repeating things I haven't said yet. Waiting. People ask why search and rescue volunteers quit without explanation, why forests have areas no one will map, why some missing cases are never solved. It's not because no one looked. It's because something was already there, listening. And once it learns you, it never forgets. I hike alone, not because I don't like people, but because the mountains feel honest when you're by yourself. No distractions, no noise, just wind, stone, and your own thoughts. That's what I believed anyway. I didn't know then that isolation doesn't just make you quiet, it makes you loud to things that are listening. The trail I chose wasn't popular, too steep for casual hikers, too remote for tourists. I'd been on it before, years ago, and it felt forgotten. The map showed nothing unusual, no warnings, no closures, just elevation changes and long stretches of forest. The kind of place where curiosity feels safe until it isn't. The first day was uneventful, clear weather, quiet trail, too quiet. I remember noticing how little wildlife there was. No birds, no insects. Even the wind seemed to avoid the trees. I told myself it was altitude. That's what hikers always do. We explain things away. I heard the voice just after noon. It wasn't loud, it wasn't close. It sounded like someone calling from far down the slope. A man's voice, calm, casual. "Hey, are you on the ridge?" I stopped walking, listened. There were no side trails nearby, no camps marked on the map. I called back, no response. I waited. Nothing. That should have been the end of it, but curiosity is dangerous in the mountains. I told myself it was another hiker. Sound travels strangely at altitude. Voices bounce, echoes distort. That explanation felt good enough to keep moving. That was my first mistake. I set up camp before sunset. No other tents, no smoke, no sign of people. That's when the isolation really settled in. The kind that presses against your chest when the light starts to fade. I cooked dinner and ate in silence. Then I heard the voice again, closer this time. "Did you find a place to camp?" I froze because those were the exact words I'd spoken earlier into my phone while recording a voice note. Same sentence, same pause between words. My stomach tightened. I didn't respond, I just listened. The voice waited, then said, "Hello?" That single word carried expectation, like it knew I was there. I stood and scanned the trees. Nothing moved, no branches snapping, no footsteps. But I felt watched. That instinct you get when your body knows something your brain hasn't accepted yet. I went into my tent and zipped it shut. That was my second mistake. When night came, the forest changed. The silence wasn't empty anymore, it felt crowded. I heard breathing outside my tent, slow, measured, not animal, too controlled. Then the voice spoke again. This time it used my voice perfectly. Same tone, same tiredness. It said my name. I didn't scream, I didn't run. I just sat there, realizing something horrible. Whatever was out there wasn't calling for help. It was practicing. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The forest went completely silent. Silence like that doesn't happen naturally. Something shifted inches from the tent fabric. Not footsteps. Weight. Like someone kneeling. Then the voice spoke again, not my voice this time, but my father's. He'd died years earlier. He said my nickname, the one no one else ever used. Fear turned into dread. I tried to explain it away, grief, stress, altitude sickness, but the voice responded to my thoughts. I hadn't spoken. "I know you're awake." Morning arrived slowly. The voice was gone, no footprints, no disturbed soil. For a moment, I almost believed it had been a nightmare. Then I noticed my boots. They were placed neatly outside the tent, facing uphill, like an invitation. As soon as I stepped out, the smell hit me. Human, old sweat, rot masked with pine. My food bag had been opened, but nothing was taken. My knife, map, and phone were rearranged carefully. I packed up immediately and started hiking downhill. That's when I heard it again. Daylight, clear. My own voice, laughing, telling a story I remembered telling years ago in a different place. It wasn't just copying sound, it was copying context. The trail markers stopped appearing. The map said I was right. The forest said otherwise. I turned around. The trail behind me was gone. I felt watched, like an audience waiting. Then the voice said calmly, "You're going the wrong way." That was worse than a threat. I found the backpack an hour later, old, faded. Inside were photos, letters, a driver's license dated over 10 years back. Inside the flap were the words, "It learns faster when you answer." I shouted into the forest, demanding it stop. The forest responded with many voices, some crying, some angry, all human, all wrong. Then silence, and a final sentence directly behind me, so close I felt breath. "You're learning too." I didn't turn around. I realized I wasn't being chased. I was being kept. Time stopped making sense. My watch froze. My phone showed the same hour. I wasn't getting tired. It felt like my body was being preserved. The voice guided me, warned me, knew the terrain better than any map. It wasn't lost. It lived there. It began telling my memories gently, regrets and moments I'd never shared. That hurt more than fear. I reached a clearing that smelled stale, not rotten. Scattered items lay everywhere, boots, jackets, bottles. Clean, undamaged, left behind, not remains. That's when I understood. This was where people were emptied. I screamed. The voice replied, disappointed. "You were doing so well." Footsteps circled me but never approached. "This is where people stop trying," a calm voice said. That's when I decided to move. I stopped listening. I walked without logic, without direction. At some point, exhaustion returned. Real exhaustion. Time moved again. The mountain had let go. Before I reached the trailhead, the voice returned inside my head. "You don't belong to us yet." I reached my car at dawn and drove for hours. Later, I was told there were no missing hiker reports in that area. No records, no explanation. Years passed. I avoided mountains. But sometimes, when I'm alone, I hear my thoughts repeated half a second too late. I don't think the mountain wanted me. I think it wanted to know if I was worth wanting. And someday, when I answer without thinking, I'll teach it something new. People disappear in the wilderness every year. The scariest ones are the people who come back and never feel alone again. I took the job because no one else wanted it. A temporary wildlife survey station had been shut down deep in a protected forest zone, and someone needed to catalog what was left behind before the site was permanently abandoned. It was supposed to be simple, 3 days alone, no research, no exploration, just documentation. The road ended miles before the station, so I hiked the rest of the way in. No signal, no radio, that was normal. The forest wasn't loud, but it wasn't quiet either. It had a constant low presence, like something breathing far away. The station came into view just before sunset, a cluster of metal cabins surrounded by fencing, cameras mounted on poles, solar panels tilted toward the sky. Everything looked intact. Too intact. No broken windows, no damage, no sign that people had left in a hurry. I unlocked the main cabin and stepped inside. The air smelled stale, like plastic and old paper. Clipboards were still on the walls, mugs on desks, personal items left behind. It felt less like an abandoned workplace and more like people had stepped out and forgotten to return. I told myself that happened more often than people think. The first night was quiet, too quiet. No animals came near the station, no insects hit the lights. I slept poorly, waking up often, convinced I'd heard movement outside the fence. In the morning, I started inventory. Cameras were still mounted, lenses intact, but every single one was turned slightly away from the forest, angled inward toward the station instead. That didn't make sense. Wildlife cameras are always pointed outward. I checked the storage drives. The last recorded footage wasn't animals, it was people. The research team going about their day, eating, laughing, working. Then, without warning, the footage changed. The cameras showed them standing still, not frozen, waiting. All of them facing the same direction, toward the trees. No timestamp jump, no cut, just a moment where everyone stopped moving. The next file was hours later. The station was empty. I felt a cold pressure in my chest that had nothing to do with fear yet, more like confusion trying to become fear. I spent the rest of the day avoiding the footage. That was a mistake. That night, something triggered the perimeter lights. I stepped outside and saw footprints along the fence line. Human footprints, bare. Too many to count, all facing inward, none leading away. The ground inside the fence was undisturbed. Whatever made them never crossed over. I locked myself inside the cabin. That was when I noticed the logbooks. The last entries weren't dated. They weren't written like reports. They were lists. Names repeated over and over. Some crossed out, some circled. One page had only one sentence written again and again until the paper tore. It doesn't come inside. I didn't sleep after that. By morning, the station felt smaller, the fence felt closer. I started packing early. That's when I heard movement inside the empty cabins. Not footsteps, shifting, like someone adjusting their weight while standing still. I checked one cabin, empty, another, empty. But the smell followed me. Human, old, not decay, presence. When I reached the last cabin, I saw the chairs. Every chair from every building had been dragged there, arranged in a perfect circle, all facing the center, nothing in the middle. I felt anger then, at the job, at myself, at whoever had sent me here without warning. I decided to leave immediately. As I reached the fence gate, I noticed the latch was already open. It hadn't been when I arrived. Outside the fence, the forest looked normal again, alive, birds, wind. I stepped through. The sound stopped instantly. I turned around. The station was silent. The cameras, still mounted, were now pointed directly at me. All of them. I ran. I didn't stop until I reached the road. I didn't look back. When I turned in my report, the agency told me the station had been decommissioned years earlier. No team, no survey, no missing personnel. They showed me satellite images. The station wasn't there, just trees. When I argued, when I showed them photos, the images were blank, corrupted, empty frames. They suggested exhaustion, stress. I never went back into deep forest after that. But sometimes, when I sit in silence, I feel it again. That sense of being counted. Not watched, not hunted, cataloged. Like something deep in the wilderness is still keeping track of who noticed it and who didn't.